Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stuttering in Silence. I'm one half of your Stuttering in Silence hosts, Gavin, and I'm joined by...
My name is Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm really good.
That's good to hear. Anything going on? Anything new to you want to update me with?
Same old, same old. I mean, as you know from last week, I got my tires. I got 4 new tires since last time when you and I had an extravaganza. We got free Phillies tickets to go to the Phillies.
Yeah.
And nailed a huge piece on the tire, went through the tire. Did I tell you how big that thing was?
No.
Dude, it was like, for all you guys out there, it was this big.
Jeez.
Yeah. It was huge. It went through the tire into the tire, kind of like a knife situation, and that's what took out the tire. So
really?
there was no replacing it.
Yeah, when you hit that thing, I knew. I knew it was one of those where you hit a bump, you hit a curb, you hit something, and you kind of give it a couple seconds to make sure that your car's good. You look for the little light, little air pressure light to come on.
We even turned the music down.
Turn the music down. It's just quiet, and you're just waiting, and then you hear the and then you're like, ah.
It was funny because we heard the boom, got quiet, turned the music down, and then we just heard. Psst.
Yep. You're like, is that my car?
Unfortunately,
but it was you know what it was? It was a memory. At the end of the day, it's a core memory.
Expensive core memory, but yes.
Expensive core memory, but
yeah.
At least you have new tires now.
Yes.
So
what is the topic for today, sir?
Well, I figured we would do something a little bit different, a little bit out of the box this week. So going forward, or going back to last week and the last month, really, we were talking about the movies and things along those lines, and the best movies and the worst movies of the past 24 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so going forward with the next month, I thought switch gears entirely and talk about something that we talked about before, like kind of touched on before, but I haven't talked about it in a while, and that being the different kinds of mental disorders. Now, I know a year or two ago, we talked about men's mental health.
Yes, we did.
And different mental disorders regarding that. But I figured not just to talk about some mental disorders, but talk about rare ones that we don't really get to hear about a lot or don't have the limelight. And I figured it'd be a good thing to kind of learn about.
Yeah, for sure, man. Do you want to bring us into the one that you have today?
Sure. So the first one, or the one that I have today, I did some research behind, is called Selective Mutism.
Yes.
Now, I do want to preface before we continue, and I'm probably going to say this every episode for the next few, but I'm not a doctor. So I'm not a doctor. This is not my field of expertise. So if I mispronounce something or misquote something or quote something that may not be, I don't even know what you would say. Maybe not that it's not going to be accurate, because I do fact check everything, but
you're just not a doctor. It's not your expertise.
It's not my fair. It's just I figured shine a little bit of light on some stuff that maybe somebody hasn't heard about before.
For sure.
So this is called selective mutism. Selective mutism is an anxiety disorder in which a person who is otherwise capable of speech becomes unable to speak when exposed to specific situations, specific places, or to specific people, one or multiple of which serving as triggers. This is caused by the freeze response. So basically, it's you can't speak in certain situations or in certain areas.
I've heard of things like this where it's like people's kids when they're younger.
Mm-hmm.
I had a kid when I was working in the schools and stuff like that where wouldn't talk, wouldn't talk at all, and would only talk apparently to the father or the mother. I forget which one it was, but there was no getting a single word out at all.
Only at school, though.
Only at school, and only to one other person in the household. It was the mom or the father. But if they were out at an extravaganza, or they were to the fair or whatever, the fire. Did I say it like that?
Yeah.
Wouldn't talk. So, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard. I didn't know it was called selective mutism, but I have heard some stuff around it going in terms of being able to speak in certain situations or around certain people and not being able to speak in others. But I didn't know, obviously, like I said, I didn't know the name of it, and I also didn't know that it's pretty common. So I do have some facts pulled up here about selective mutism. So the first one I have pulled up is that it is a rare condition, like I said in the beginning. Selective mutism affects less than 1% of people across all age groups, and it's more common in girls as opposed to boys. It's
Really?
actually about twice as likely to occur with females than it is in boys, which is something that I really didn't think about. But because it not that it counteracts or contradicts, but it's interesting because I feel like girls are way more in tune with their emotions and in tune with
Sure.
themselves, I guess, than guys are. They respond to things differently. I would assume, like, if you had asked me, I would have assumed that men are the ones that do it more because we are the ones that hide our emotions more.
So you're saying the women do it more?
Almost twice.
Really?
It's twice as likely to occur in girls than it is in boys.
It's funny you say that because I feel like if I watch like a movie, because I've seen like movies about this where it's like the kid is mute. They always go, "Oh, he doesn't speak to anyone," you know?
Right.
And it's always like a little boy
Mm-hmm.
or like or a young child who is a man, you know, so to speak.
Right.
That's interesting that it's saying it's women, but I guess that makes sense because you know they do say that they are more in tune to their feelings.
Yeah, and then that's the other thing is, like I said, I thought that they would be like girls would be the ones to know how to kind of act in certain situations, whether uncomfortable or not, because a lot of the times with guys, and tell me, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this. When I was younger, there was times where I was so uncomfortable with what I was doing or where I was at or who I was with that I didn't know how to act.
Sure.
Like
sure.
I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I would never came across. Well, actually, you know what? Low key, I kind of not that I'm not saying I have had selective mutism, but I think parts of it affected me in being that when I was younger, I didn't speak to the staff at restaurants.
Really?
No, I don't think that's selective mutism. I think it's more in tune with just being nervous or just being shy.
Sure.
However, to kind of bridge a little bit, it was something that affected me from the time I was pretty small up until I was like 10, 11 maybe.
It's ironic because now you have a podcast.
Now I have a podcast where I talk for hours
Yeah.
about stuff. But it's interesting you keep bringing it up to childhood because it actually occurs it's mostly common in childhood ages between the ages of 2 and 4.
Yeah. I know I'm not going to say who just to, dox it, but I do know one of our good buddies has a nephew that is that way.
Really?
It's more formed to his autism.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like 3 or 4 years old now and still hasn't spoken a word.
Really?
Yeah.
It is it's one of those things where I think we're seeing it more in media, like in movies and TV shows.
Sure, yeah.
And I wish there was more awareness around it, but it's because a lot of the time I feel like it's one of those things where, oh, it's my son Jimmy, he doesn't talk, or it's my daughter Amelia, she doesn't talk. And then in movies and shows, it's always the new person introduced into the family gets them the crack, and gets them to open up.
Yep. Or even like in school or whatever.
Yeah. All of a sudden they're just like a babysitter. It's like, I know you don't talk, Jimmy, but let's have some ice cream. Thank you. Oh,
yeah.
A revolution. But just to kind of go over here some more interesting facts. It says here that it's often not recognized until school. Children with selective mutism are often not identified until they start school and may not receive professional help until they are 6 to 8 years old.
Yeah.
That kind of surprises me. I guess maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes like when they're young, like they're kids, they're not necessarily like, oh, well, they haven't said their first word yet, or maybe they've said a couple things like selectively being mute. But again, I think that's kind of the same thing that you were kind of having, but just more on an extreme level where it's like you're not talking to the servers per se, but now they're in a whole new environment, and then teachers are I will say like there are things where it's like teachers aren't necessarily like psychologists or have their doctorates, right. But in a lot of regards, you definitely would see it more in schools because parents probably work, and nowadays you have both parents that are working, and they're the kids are probably getting watched by someone, or they're at a daycare, and then they go into school and these teachers start evaluating the kids, and little Jimmy's not talking, and the mom's like, well, yeah, I knew, or the dad's like, yeah, I knew, but. And now they're like, no, like this is like a situation.
Yeah. I'm going to finish reading this list, and then I'm going to ask you a question. So just to finish, to round out here, it says it's not caused by a child's willful refusal to speak. Children with selective mutism are able to speak freely with close family and friends. It can cause physical manifestations of anxiety. Children with selective mutism may exhibit a fight, flight, or freeze response, rigid body movement, or minimal facial expression and or eye contact. It can cause emotional and behavioral responses. Children with selective mutism may cling to a parent, have behavioral meltdowns, or refuse to go to school.
Gotcha.
And then finally here it says the name has changed over time. The disorder was originally described as aphasia voluntaria in 1887, or
Really?
I'm sorry, in 1877. Then it moved to elective mutism in the 1930s, and then finally selective mutism established in 1994.
Oh wow, that was still. I guess that was DSM-4.
So this has been around since the 1800s. I mean, obviously it's been around for longer.
Sure,
than I'm saying they've had a name for it since the 1800s, which does surprises me because until we were going to start talking about it, I didn't know there was a name for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Like, there's always that one meme where it's like, guns were invented in like the 1900s.
Yeah,
and people in like 1899 with guns and like joking, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's been around for that long.
People in 1876. You just don't speak. But no, so the question I wanted to ask you was because you were going to school to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And that was specifically early on, right? That was
for early
like
ed.
K through
fourth. Yeah.
So because you were doing remind the Y?
Yeah, I was working with the Y, so we would like when I was going to class, I would go to class and then I would work with like other kindergartners, and then in the PM I would be with I think it was like 4th through like 7th grade, depending on what school it was.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And that was so that was the Y, and then you went to what was the name of the school?
It was South Elementary.
South
in
Elementary.
Springford. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, this is all going to tie in, but I want to make sure I'm asking the right questions here. So, were you tied into, like, you were actually, like, a chaperone, or you were, like, in the classrooms, or you were...
No, so we weren't necessarily in the classrooms. The kindergartners, we were considered the teachers because we would have them the other half of the day. Of, like, they would go in for, like, one half in, like, the actual school, and then we would, like, teach them or have, like, a little curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
The other kids, we would just help them with their homework and make sure they're doing everything cool and, like, just facilitating them for, like, a couple hours, and then the parents would pick them up.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So this may be a little bit out of your reach here. I mean, it might not be. I don't want to undercut you here, but so you said you had an experience with like a student or a kid that had selective mutism, or you would assume they had selective mutism. So if, let's say, for example, if you continued down the path of going the route of being an educator or in the education system, what do you think do you think you would have a generalized response to someone that has selective mutism, or do you think you would have an individual response based on the student?
Well, it would be tough because a lot of the things with those kids is you have to build like rapport. It's the same thing that they like teach you in sales. Yeah. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, it would be individual to the kid.
Okay.
Because like the one kid that I had, he was a little, mentally handicapped and great kid, fantastic child, but wouldn't really speak. Okay. It was kind of like you had to kind of know the responses, or if he wanted something, he would like kind of show you or hold your hand and like take you to wherever. But I think it's all. It's I wouldn't say it's necessarily general. Like that's why they have IEPs, an individualized education plan. Like my brothers had it. It's all depending on each person because everyone's different.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I do understand. I actually going through school, it was funny because there was what we had was the gifted program.
Yes.
I don't know if you had the same thing. Apparently it was for people that had a difficulty in a specific area.
The gifted program I think was for people who were like smart. Because at least for Springford, that's how it was for me. Because I did some well on some tests, and then I tried out for the gifted program with my parents, and they were like, "You're not smart enough."
Yeah, but it's interesting because I don't know what it was called, but there was something when I was in elementary school where if you were struggling in a specific field, let's say it be math. I think for myself, obviously for myself, it was definitely math, but you would be moved from out of your class for part of the day into a smaller group to where you would be incentivized to learn this thing, but from a completely different perspective.
So you might have, and now I'm only speaking this from my small amount of experience, but like that's usually like an IEP. Like Jason had that a lot, and so did Ryan. They would pull you, and they would be like, "Okay, we're gonna work on this," because like I had something like that for math. I had it for like a year,
right?
And I would be pulled from like that math class or whatever it was when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, and I would be sitting in a smaller room, and they'd be like, "Okay, we're gonna be working on fractions and things like that." So,
yeah, well, that's what's funny about it was I was put into that program back in elementary school. My dad he found out about it and pulled me out. I wasn't like it. I don't remember much. I just remember going to it once or twice, but it was cool. It was cool to try to learn math.
It's actually ironic because now you do math every day.
That's true. But it's basic math.
Just remind me at the end because I have a bank story for you, but I don't want to take away from the conversation.
That's fine. But but no, it's interesting because the reason that I asked you the question about whether or not it was general, you would have a generalized response or a individual response is because I feel like, and you would probably have more knowledge about this than me because you were actually in the schools more and so on and so forth. But I just, from what I remember in school, I just feel like everything, for the most part, was a generalized response. And I say that, like, to give you an example of, like, a specific example would be to say, if I saw somebody clearly having a panic attack or clearly not able to understand the curriculum or just needed to get out of the classroom, it was always the same thing. It was always just get out or just go to the nurse or go to guidance, or it was never
go to guidance.
Right. Like, and I guess that's guidance's job, to be able to be the person to talk to for a student, because you can't talk to a student for 20 minutes while the rest of the class just sits there. But to me, for the most part, throughout all my schooling, I felt like, barring college because we're all adults, I feel like the way that it was handled for the most part was a little bit too generalized.
Yeah, I mean, that does happen a lot. Like when I was in class, like they would talk about like IEPs and individualized like learning plans and things like that. But a lot of it comes down to like who you have as your guidance counselor and what kind of school district you have, and funding. Because like it's, and I hate to say it, it's just the reality of the situation is like, just like say you're in Philly and you're like in a rough school, they might have to take everything as a generalization because they don't have the staffing or the funding behind everything to make sure every single kid is like, and that whole thing with like the never leave the kid, no kid behind act. I think I'm saying that right, from Obama. That was a big thing, but it never got executed because funding is funding, and depending on where you go, the generalization happens because, and it could just be like the size of the school. Like if you go to somewhere like Springford, it's just so big and so vast, it's hard.
You had a big graduating class, right?
It was like 700, something like that.
Oh.
Yeah. So that really all depends. That's why they use like a lot of generalizations, and I'm sure it's changed now since I've been in class. But from what I've learned and when I've had to study, like it was things like that where it would all depend. And then like they probably, in your situation, they were like, oh well, Gavin's struggling in this. Let's try to fix this beforehand. Because like take like Jason's case, my little brother Jason, like he had an IEP almost through college.
Really?
And the kid's going to med school or like a form of med school. So like it does have its positive effects, but it also has its drawbacks because some kids I know they talked about a lot where it was like it almost hinders them sometimes because they feel like they're being like singled out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So then it does have like a negative effect. There's science behind it for people who are like a million times smarter than I am. But yeah, like things like that in schools is...
Well, I could definitely see how it would have a negative effect on somebody, especially if they have severe anxiety or severe just societal issues that they have to work on, especially if you're in school with your classmates and all of a sudden you're leaving the middle of the class or you're not in your 7th period
look at
one
you
day a week
differently.
or something. I actually had something similar to that. Was when I was in high school, I had to go to in-school therapy for a bit there. And so I was taken out of class halfway through. I want to say, oh god, I'm gonna forget, but I want to say it was 7th period, 6th or 7th period, like
Okay.
like halfway through, I'd be taken out, or maybe it was earlier, maybe it was like 4th period, but we would like it would hit like 11, or yeah, it was because it was like 11:30, but it would hit like 11:30, and I would just know I had a note, and I just every
Sure.
teacher that I had got an email, and I would just go down, and for the first few times it was fine, but then you notice like when people are starting to pick up on stuff.
Yeah.
Like someone asked, like, "Hey, it's 11:33. Like you should go." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Hey, thanks, man. It's all right. We're
Yeah.
doing this packet."
That was the whole thing with like Jason and Ryan too. Is like
Yeah.
Ryan had it for a little bit. I'm not sure till when, but Jason would be like, "Yeah, like I don't want to talk about it," and he would have to leave at certain times. But I will say though, it does help. Like when the reason it gets caught in schools is because a lot of the teachers are looking out for that, and then they can try to like put it into a program and help the kid. But when you get to like high school, like it's
I can see where the focus on trying to keep it like as on an early age.
Yeah.
Try to nip it in the bud if you can, or work on it as early as possible.
Yeah.
Because once you're in high school, it's kind of, especially later in high school. I feel like if you're a junior or senior, I don't want to say the ship's already sailed because you're still
Yeah.
impressionable and learning and young,
Mm-hmm.
but not the same way you are at 8.
Yeah,
Or
it's
5.
the same with like speech. Like Amanda couldn't like if you said like a red wagon, she would go a
wed
wed
wagon.
wagon. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So and they caught it early. So
Yeah. Okay, so not to completely
Yeah, my
sidetrack
bad.
that, but I just wanted to kind of get some more knowledge around it because I think learning about different things when it comes to patterns and education from a different perspective from somebody that was actually in it,
Yeah.
at least a little bit, like
Yeah.
the beginning stages of
Sure.
it, as opposed to just saying, "Yep, this affects kids" and move on. So,
Yeah.
to close out selective mutism here, I just wanted to go over some things that could help selective mutism. So, there is medication for it. You can take it. So it says treatments such as psychotherapy and medication address the underlying anxiety the child faces in social situations, as well as, and then it has a bunch of links here for the different kinds of medications. I'm not going to go into that because I think there serves no purpose just because each person's going to be different.
Sure. Yeah.
But let me see here. So there's I'm just going to read the bullet points for these. So basically, there's self-modeling, shaping, behavior therapy, stimulus fading, warm-up time, positive reinforcement,
Yeah.
and educating others. So I would just say for positive reinforcement, I do think that because I would say my dad handled it well for me. Just and not once again saying that I have it or had it, but something similar to it is not being able to talk at a restaurant. He was never the one. He never put me on the spot. Right? He never sat there and said, "Hey, you got to talk to him," right? Because he saw me with that fear,
Yeah, like clam up.
that clam, the whole body get stiff, start sweating a little bit, and he wasn't like just tell the guy what you want. Just, come on, man, figure it out,
Yeah,
be
yeah.
a man. It was more so like he would see that look on my face and he would say, "Okay," and he would order for me or
Yeah.
so on and so
yeah,
forth.
Yeah.
But. And then the last positive thing I will say here that I just wanted to look up some different famous people here that have suffered from selective mutism or lived with selective mutism. So we have Maya Angelou. She has
Really?
she developed selective mutism as a child after a traumatic event. She discussed the experience with Oprah Winfrey. Greta Thunberg, the climate activist.
Really?
Yeah. The climate activist described her selective mutism as meaning she only speaks when necessary. And then probably the most notable one here is Paul McCartney.
Really?
He also had selective mutism when he was young. So
Interesting.
yeah, it's definitely it's a lot deeper of something than I thought it was going to be, but that's why I wanted to talk about it. So
Cool.
I'm going to shut up now and I'm going to let you get in yours.
Are you going to be selectively mute now?
I'm going to selectively mute myself and listen to you talk.
All right. Yeah, that's cool, dude. It's interesting because I like that. There are a lot of kids with that, and it's cool to talk about and bring that to light. So yeah man. One that I did is kind of wild. It has a lot of connotations towards like you've seen it in movies, you've seen it movies made about it. You've even seen it in like traumatic experiences in movies.
Okay.
And it's talked about widely with things like grape
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
We're using that word, so we don't
Right.
can't. But yeah, it is dissociative disorders. There's also like dissociative identity disorders, multiple personalities, things like that. So it's all kind of encapsulated. These are more notable in like trauma and things like that, where you kind of dissociate. And it affects 75% of all Americans.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of like and I'll read the stuff from and just to credit the American Psychiatric Association. But before I get into that, it's kind of like you've done it, I've done it. I'm sure Sky and Christine have done it, where it's like people are talking or like you're doing something and you just kind of like blank out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. So, did you just do it?
No. What?
Oh. Mm-hmm. You're now one of the 75% of the people.
Wow.
So, from the American Psychiatric Association, which is where all this stuff is from, that I'm going to be discussing, it is a dissociative disorder, also known as dissociative episodes. It can be described as involuntary escapes from reality, disconnection of thoughts, identity, consciousness, and memory are all examples of dissociating. People of all ages, backgrounds can suffer from the dissociative disorders, and according to research, approximately 75% of Americans experience one or more episodes of dissociation and derealization. At some point in our lives, around 2% of these include chronic episodes. So,
interesting.
Yeah, pretty cool. Well, not cool, but you know what I'm saying. Interesting facts.
Okay.
And then reading here, this is a normal process for everyone. They've experienced it, whether it's mild, common, dissociative. It includes like daydreaming, highway hypnosis, getting lost in a book, in a movie, all of which is where you're kind of like losing touch, things like that.
Right. I would say, and I think it's a popular thing. It became on TikTok where people were saying he's disassociating.
Yeah, exactly.
It became a thing.
Yep.
I know because even you and I joke about it. But I didn't know that it would be I mean, it makes sense, but I didn't know it was considered disassociating with like reading a book or getting lost in a book and things along those lines.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and the dissociative disorders kind of encapsulate a whole bunch of things, from like DID, dissociative disorders, interpersonalities, and having different personalities. It's where like you're taking reality, and it's not reality, but to them it is.
It's your own reality.
It's your own reality. So some of the symptoms here. The existence of two or more distinct identities and personalities, which states the distinct identities that are accompanied by change with your behavior and your thinking. Signs and symptoms may be observed by others or reported by individuals. Hence, you look off into the distance, and I'm like, hey, man, you're dissociating, kind of like that. Ongoing gaps in memory about everyday events, personal information, and or past traumatic experiences. And that's kind of where that all kind of encapsulates. The symptoms can cause significant distress or problems in social and occupational areas of functioning.
So that's pretty interesting. That to kind of touch back on it, I would say it's for it to be 75, for that to be the list of things, for it to be 75% only. I think it's higher. I mean, it would make some more sense if it was higher.
It probably is higher.
But it doesn't make, because you know how people always say, do you have the voice in your head, or some people don't, or how do you see words when you think of things, or pictures?
Are you asking me specifically?
Yeah.
I have an inner monologue. So like, for example, and sometimes it gets kind of wicked. Like if you text me, I sometimes, depending on what you say, I've heard you say it so many times, I hear it in your voice.
Right. I do the same thing with you, or I do the same thing with everybody.
Yeah.
But I also think, so do you see in pictures or words? Do you see in pictures?
Yeah.
Like if I were to say apple, do you think of the word apple?
I
or
don't
do
know
you see
if I thought of an apple.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I actually have a hyperactive imagination.
Same. Oh yeah.
From what I've been told. So when I was a kid, my imagination was so active, was going overtime so much. I was able to turn anything, any object I wanted, into something that I could use into some kind of toy, some kind of action figure.
Well, I'm not that crazy.
So like if I used to have a thing where I would
crazy,
play with. It sounds stupid, so you can feel free to laugh at me. But I used to play with a pencil. Fun fact. I used to play with a pencil, and I would use that as like my action figure, because I was seeing like what was happening.
Yeah.
And I was so lost in my own brain that it didn't matter what I looked like. And I did it with books. I did it with. I didn't have a lot of friends when I was real small, or like when I was small enough. But probably like around 10 to 13 friends that were in my area. So I'd play baseball by myself and stuff like that. I didn't care. Like when my dad's telling me, "Hey, go outside and play," I'd go outside and play.
Sure.
Whether I had someone to play with or not. because I had the voices. No, but I had the overactive imagination to be put myself in any made up world that I wanted to, or any position that I wanted to be in. So that was something that I did to kind of cope with being alone a lot of the time, or playing alone, I should say, not being alone. But no, it's
not a bad thing.
It's just interesting to me that it's like, goes from. I feel like in media we see it negative all the time. Like dissociative disorder is a bad thing, or it's happening from a really bad experience, but it doesn't have to be. So I think it gets a bad rap in that sense. But
no, I would agree. It definitely does, and people always talk about like you said on TikTok. Oh, he's dissociating.
Yeah.
But I do think it's definitely a good way for people to kind of like take the realities and the problems that they're having now, and kind of make their own and filter their own world.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like you ever ride the bus? I know I did it all the time. I'm gonna have headphones in, or they're not in, and you'd be like looking out the window, and you're in like your own movie.
You think you're the main character?
Think you're the main character, or like if it's raining and I'm listening to like Linkin Park when I was younger. And I'm like making myself sad because.
Yeah.
Because like I think, there's a camera following me everywhere.
There's a camera following me.
I have to play the part.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's helpful, but
not to cut you off, but have you ever had somebody interrupt you doing that, and you ever get mad?
Visceral anger.
Like someone sits next to you, hey man, you're like, son of a bitch.
Well, sometimes it knocks me out of it. I don't know, like I would pretend to be sad because I had like a lot of stuff going on at home, and then like listening to Linkin Park.
Or Lincoln to Listening Park.
Lincoln to Listening Park. Wait,
yeah.
wait, stop! You just ruined my brain. Listening to Linkin Park. Call me Abraham because we ain't Lincoln. Long story short, someone would sit there like, "Yo, Matt," and I'm like immediately about to like start crying, and then I'm like, "Why?
What do you want?
What do you want? What do you want? Who are you here for?
Yeah.
It's not me." But one of the things that this actually is helpful for, and also kind of hurts people, is traumatic experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that they talk about a lot, and you've seen in the movies where it's like some girl is getting, you know what I'm saying? Assaulted in a visceral fashion that should never happen. But you see like they like dissociate, or someone gets like shot and they block that out in their brain. They're dissociating from that memory. Or if you watch like crime documentaries or crime little shows on YouTube, people who were in the situation go, I can't really remember that, because your body's dissociating from it. It's a traumatic experience. So as it says on their website, Psychiatric Association says, during a traumatic experience such as an incident, disaster, or crime victimization, disassociation can help a person tolerate what might otherwise be so difficult to bear. In these situations, a person may dissociate the memory of the place, circumstances, or feelings about the overwhelming event, mentally escaping from the fear, pain, and or horror. This may be difficult to later remember the details in the experience, as reported by many of the disaster and incident survivors.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times too, when like people are on like murder cases, or they murdered someone accidentally, or they did it out of like a crime of passion, or the actual victims are like, who did it? And they're like, I don't know. It's all blocked out in my brain. It's because their nervous system, their brain, their whole situation above is like, this is traumatic. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. It's gone. It's gone forever. You need to heal physically, and then we'll take care of the mental pieces later, in my own words. But yeah, you see it a lot, and it's really sad. They've made a couple movies about it too, in this kind of association of disorders for dissociation. But people like even for me, like I remember, like I don't think about like snapping my ankle. Like I break it out in my brain. Like I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? And then even when you go on Instagram and someone's like skateboarding, I'm like, I don't even want to see it if it's a cool trick. Yeah. I know that Instagram can be a cesspool, so I don't even know.
Instagram? No.
Yeah.
What do you mean, bro?
Instagram is becoming a cesspool.
What do you mean, man? That's where I get all my content from. My dopamine rush of the day.
You sent me 100 the other day.
That's true.
Literally sent me 100.
I did. I was on a roll.
You were.
That was in a row.
In a row.
That was crazy.
My phone was literally vibrating in my hand. I'm like, this needs to stop. And you were like, it's not going to stop.
No, it's not going to stop. But so, yeah, for disassociation, it blows me away a little bit to know that, like I said, all those things were a part of it. No, not to harp on that, but obviously most of the times you hear about it is with really traumatic events and traumatic things or hearing of traumatic experiences from someone else. So, like, the first time I heard about it was in a traumatic experience, and I didn't know that I was actively doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So I do think that in that instance, this is something like having the conversation or trying to do a little bit more research around it is really good for the average person, because where the same way you would do with any mental disorder, any kind of underlying issue, I think it is to some degree a response to some kind of trauma.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Or it's a coping mechanism for trauma. So maybe you have disassociation or dissociative disorders, but they come into play and they help you get through some really traumatic experiences that you have later on in life or down the road or something.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is this also on their website says risk factors and suicide risk. So check on your people. We talked about mental health before. So people who have experienced physical and sexual abuse in childhood are at increased risk of dissociative identity disorder. That the vast majority of people who develop dissociative disorders have experienced repetitive, overwhelming trauma in their childhood. Among people with dissociative identity disorder in the United States, Canada, and Europe, about 90% have been the victims of childhood abuse and neglect.
Really, that high?
Yeah, it's pretty up there. So suicide attempts and other self-harm injuries and behaviors are common among the people with dissociative identity disorder. More than 70% of outpatients with dissociative identity disorder have attempted suicide.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty sad, especially for the fact that, like, even, I mean, they talk about a lot about this stuff on the Psychiatric Association website, but you got to think people's brains don't want to be thinking about the car accident they got in, the childhood trauma, and people joke about it all the time, but it happens so much. Like, and you brought it up working in schools, like, we had to really worry about, like, kids and, like, if they were acting a certain way or spacing out, and, like, we would have to go and, like, check on them. We, like, those are the things we have to think about, like, if they're okay at home, you know?
Right.
Yeah, and 70% of the outpatients with this disorder have attempted suicide.
Did you ever have anybody that you thought, like, any of your students or students you worked with, have you ever thought about that? Like, hey, is everything okay at home? Is everything okay with you? Or
yeah, there was one. I don't know exactly what happened, but, like, they only could have, like, one parent pick them up.
Okay.
And if they're on the list of pickups, they can take them home.
Right.
Otherwise, we don't care if it's your brother, we don't care if it's your sister, we don't care if it's your great grandma that you love so much and have a million photos with. You're not taking the kid with you unless you're on this list.
Right. I did know that part.
Yes. And when the father, I think, came, or uncle, like, very, like, did not want to go, they're not on the list. So, like, we're like, dude, you cannot take this I'm not gonna say boy or girl, but this person home. Right. Just out of the stage for the kid. Yeah. But they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, we don't care. And, like, the one lady, Jen, who was I was her, like, second, she was the first, and she was like, no, like, we'll call the police, yada. And you can see the kid climbing up a little bit. But, you know, I can't say that I've had any situations where I've had to deal with anything, or that I've, like, really, like, looked and be like, okay, that kid, like, looks not okay. But honestly, that's fantastic.
A great thing.
A great thing to be able to say. But it's scary. And
so would you say, well, shout out to some of the people in your life too. Yeah. Just seeing some of that going on with you, and not to get into that, you know, don't want you to disassociate on me, but get into that, because I know you said some of the teachers or coaches or something around you were able to kind of spot some things out of your behavior and kind of help you out there.
Got ram watched.
Yeah,
probably good that I got ram watched.
So
But yeah, it's all about just checking on your people too, because you don't know what's going on with other people. And I know this got a little dark, but sometimes you got to talk about the dark to bring out the light.
Yep.
Shout out.
Only way forward is through.
You know what's funny? That was the slogan for my 2017 football thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Or the only way past is through?
Only way out is through.
Something like that.
Only way out is through.
Whatever.
But yeah, so some of the treatments here, there are like a lot of like depression treatments too, because that would be a bit of a situation for trauma. I almost said Ozempic, and I'm like, that's not.
That's not it at all.
That's not it. Those are just your regular SSRIs. They're just like Lexapro and things like that. But they say a lot with this, with your dissociative disorders, is like psychotherapy. You can gain a lot of control over dissociative process and symptoms through that. The goal of, and just regular therapy, the goal of that is just to integrate the different elements of your identity and kind of like talk to someone and kind of then they can kind of diagnose you, figure out what you need. And sometimes psychotherapy helps, but other than that and other SSRIs, there really isn't too many treatments. But medication, there are some you could probably take. And I know there's, what's the one that they do for like schizophrenia? I forget. But there's a whole bunch of SSRIs, antidepressants, because a lot of this could be symptoms of depression. But go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I wonder if dissociative disorder and selective muting is kind of hand in hand.
Well, there are cases where kids won't talk because of the trauma. And that was one of the things that we had to look out for, because dealing with young kids, especially during summer camp, like these kids, we had the DHS that would come in and check randomly, do like inspections and stuff, and like STARS. I don't know if you know what STARS is. It's like DHS, but like they give you a bunch of money to like be really good.
Like to give the school a bunch of money?
Yeah, like the school of the Y. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they're just checking on the welfare of the kids. But
so now, do you have to be like an educational, like do you have to be like some kind of educational vocation to?
Yeah, to function with them. Yeah, because it's more just they're just checking on the welfare of the kids. Not so much the education portion. It's more just the simple fact of the matter: are the kids good? Are they being taken care of?
Gotcha.
Yeah, things like that.
Okay.
But some notable movies that this is pretty big in. 2 of these or 3 of these I haven't seen. One of them is a pretty big one, so I do have some stuff on it. And then I'll go into some people who have this disorder or disorders that are under this umbrella. Split. Yeah, this was a really good one. The Black Swan. Fight Club. Yep. And then Sybil. It's a biography on this person. They had 16 personalities.
Wow.
Yeah. Came out in 2007 and it won a Golden Globe.
Really?
Yeah. So it was absolutely fantastic from what I've read. It was an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it was a 8.8 or 9.0 on IMDb.
Wow.
I know what you're thinking, and I'm not gonna. Okay. I'm not looking it up because I saw.
We're done with the movies.
Okay. Netta Skorkin.
But no, I do know. I have seen most of those except for the last one.
Yeah.
But they are all in fantastic movies.
Fantastic movies.
I know that that Split, I believe, was the one that was talked about having that kind of dissociative disorder.
Yeah, it was like identity disorder, but it's under the umbrella.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like one of the most accurate or something like that. Now, obviously not what happened in the movie but him being able to switch and then having different personalities mask his other personalities and stuff. So.
I did. It was cool. And I watched Split, and it was fantastic. It freaked everyone out, and it was cool. It was definitely something that I think everyone's at least seen Split. Just to wrap this up here, some notable people are Aaron Carter. Britney Spears. Britney Spears I'm not surprised about that one.
No, me neither.
Marilyn Monroe.
I'm not surprised about that either.
Really? I was surprised. I don't, to be fair. Yeah, there it is. I had to switch the camera real quick to make sure I can capture the eyes. I don't know too much about her, but from what I was reading, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Nicki Minaj.
Really?
Yep.
Nicki Minaj.
You'll know this one because you're you're a big dude in sports. Herschel Walker.
Really?
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, he was on. It was like a sports thing, or it was like a psychology paper, like a magazine, and it was like living with.
Really?
So yeah, Lady Gaga.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and Mel Gibson.
Surprises me.
Yeah, surprised me too. I didn't delve into him, but I thought he was another like person that people would be like, oh wow.
Well, I would imagine that to some degree. I mean, I would say the majority of celebrities have some kind of dissociative disorder.
I mean, yeah, to be up in front of people and really want all that limelight.
Well, yeah, think about it. Actually, funnily enough, me and Sky were just talking about this the other day, where we were saying, would you want to be? Obviously, everybody wants to be.
Sky's not real, buddy. Neither am I. Yeah, sorry.
So we were saying, would you like? Obviously, everybody wants to be rich. But would you want to be famous? And I remember when I was younger, kind of a branch to this. When I was younger, everybody wanted to be rich and famous, rich and famous, rich and famous, rich and famous, rich and famous. Go viral, go viral, go viral. Obviously, we're still trying to do that. Obviously, I hope the TikToks that we're making and stuff like that, the videos we're putting out, we do go viral. But I don't want to be Michael Jackson level famous. I don't want to be able to go and to not be able to go to anywhere on the planet for the most part, and people not know who I am. You know, that does something to you, I think.
I already have a problem with like when you a couple times would give me my flowers and I immediately want to like, oh, Gav, you're awesome too.
Yeah.
And I want to like flip. Not that like I don't appreciate what you're doing. It's just I would much rather appraise you and make you feel awesome.
Well, I'm a narcissist, so lay it on me.
Your girlfriend in the back just laughed.
Joe, I'm joking. Just joshing.
No joke. No joke. Okay. Anyways, but yeah, I don't know if I could do the ultra rich and famous like that. That would. I don't think I could do it.
I don't think I would. I don't think I would. I think I could do it if I'd have to put a lot of time and effort into figuring out the best way to do it. But I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like if I went on like Ellen for my cool shirt or my white Vans or something. Who knows? That might be cool, but to just be like everybody in the country just know like what my face looks like and who I am. And
how do you feel with the Hawk Tuah girl? Because everyone knows. They're also saying that she is the millennial skibbity toilet.
Get that bag. You got to get the bag. I will say, someone like her, I wonder, and this is something we could do another time, or talk about another time. But I think that she might be some kind of a social experiment.
Oh, well, they're always 2 steps ahead.
Okay.
Always 2 steps ahead.
Right. I'll be the villain.
Always 2
I'll be the villain of your story.
What?
But no, I think just to kind of wrap us up here, I think going over this kind of topic or these kind of topics and spreading some light and awareness on some issues that people are facing, very real issues on a day-to-day basis is very good. And I think because now we have a little bit more of a following, a little bit more of a stable platform, to be able to use it to spread awareness and have a qualified conversation about something that's affecting someone. And it might be able to help somebody. It might be able to help somebody learn about some stuff or prompt them to do some more research around it. Who knows? But
yeah. All right, dude. Let's call this a burrito and
wrap it up.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.